Here started. Welcome back. I'm really excited about this next session. We're going to be talking about prevention campaigns and capture technology. As I kind of kicked things off earlier today, talking about how we're going to be moving up the flow of debris. We've moved from debris removal, and now we're moving towards capture and prevention. And with these kinds of things, it's really important to realize and remember that they can be implemented and often are implemented at the local level. So really encourage you to kind of see the models that are being proposed here, being discussed, and see what you can take back to your own communities and replicate there. As usual, we'll be holding time for questions after the three presentations have been given. QR code for speakers' bios, you know the rap by now. Really quickly, before we get into this, since we're talking about capture technology some during this session, if you haven't already, please check out Stormwater Systems, the exhibit table out in the hallway. They're also one of our sponsors. They can give you a good sense for the different interceptor technologies that they have. I've seen a lot of the cool pictures out there. Also one of NOAA's Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Action Plan actions is to try and install 25 of these capture technologies by 2026. So if this is something you'd like to do in your area, come find Katie Morgan after or during one of the breaks or something like that, or myself as well. Be happy to talk to you about that. With that, let me introduce our speakers for this session. First, we have Trey Sherrard, the Anacostia Riverkeeper, talking about what's needed to successfully manage in-water capture devices. He'll be followed by two locals, Marina Fieser and Mandy Wells from Ocean City, Maryland Surfrider Chapter, and they're going to be talking about the ocean-friendly restaurants program that they led here in Ocean City. And for our final speaker during this session, we have Dr. Christy Tyler of the Rochester Institute of Technology, talking about implementation and evaluation of debris capture technologies and Rochester Institute of Technology's upcoming cooperative work with New York Sea Grant. So Trey?
So my name's Trey Sherrod. I'm the riverkeeper at Anacostia Riverkeeper. So we work in D.C., Maryland, and Montgomery County, and Prince George's County. Little picture of our watershed just to get us started. People think of the Anacostia River, who know it at all, as being in D.C., and most of the river miles are. Most of the capture, most of the watershed is actually in Maryland. Half the whole watershed is actually in Prince George's County. A third of it's in Montgomery County. And that's where the trash actually hits the ground, gets into the storm drains, and then comes down. We are mostly an urban waterway, and so that's where most of our trash comes from, plus a little bit of illegal dumping. Anacostia Riverkeeper's mission is to restore, protect the Anacostia River for everybody that lives, works, and plays in the watershed. A big part of how we do that is introducing people to their own river. Because access is very difficult, 8.5 miles of river, there's only one spot in 8.5 miles where you can just bump into the river, where you're not deliberately coming to the river in the first place. So a lot of people don't even see the trash. Only the people who are actually actively recreating on the river, fishing, kayaking, rowing, are seeing that trash where it's gathered up into a place where it's visually offensive, right? Otherwise, people are kind of burned out on seeing it in their neighborhoods, in the storm drains, et cetera, et cetera. There's a little map of our trash traps. The green dots are the ones we just started managing. They were pre-existing with partners like Anacostia Watershed Society. Living Classrooms is here with Alex. Those traps are different kinds. There's the one that's kind of an old fish trap based. It's basically a rack made out of rebar so that the trash lodges up on it at high water events. There are some boom traps. We just assumed management of those with a new grant from DOEE. So I'm not going to talk too much about those. The ones we're going to spend a lot of time on are the ones you've already seen outside at Gary's stall. Those blue dots are all band-along litter traps. And so we have them now in all three of our jurisdictions. The one up at the tippy top is actually the first one that's coming into Montgomery County. If you look at this map compared to the watershed map, this is only about a half. So this is the lower half of our watershed where the water starts to get big enough to have those traps. Quick jump back. We did try out and pilot a new technology. We tried sea bins. It was a EPA, Trash Free Waters grant that was piloted through District Department of Energy and Environment. We tried these out for about 2 years. They look awesome. The middle picture there is the day we installed the first one. That's what we expected. It is awesome. It's sleek. Then we got into maintaining them. And they are very awesome at catching all of the little stuff that they come across. You can see Horace there in the top right picture, and he's got his bucket of a little bit of trash, and he's got a mountain of sticks and leaves. So organic capture. They're highly efficient at capturing whatever they come across, but there is a lot of maintenance time on these. They catch little stuff. They don't catch a lot of weight, so if weight is your metric, I would encourage you to look at other devices. They are really good at catching small stuff, so if you wanted to use these as a research tool for microplastics or something along those lines, I think that's a really, really good use. And they can work in some marinas, but on the Anacostia River, we spent a lot of time, and good for youth workforce development, right? Horace got a lot of hours, Glenn got a lot of hours, but a lot of the time they were spending was sorting out organics from trash and then sorting out the different kinds of microplastics that we were seeing. It's also a really good volunteer opportunity. We've kept them in the water. We've got some marinas, local boathouses that are interested in taking them over, so we might move them soon so they can keep it going using their life up. But they were much better at catching little stuff than they were at catching a lot. Back to bandalongs. We like the bandalongs for a few reasons. They are floating traps, so they can miss heavy stuff. Typically in urban streams, when we get flow, we get all of the flow all at once. It's very flashy. And so all of that impervious area sends all that stormwater runoff very quick, very sharp hydrographs, and it is a mess. So a creek that is normally 1.5 feet deep will be 8 feet deep, like that. And then it's back to 2 feet deep right after. In that kind of situation, which is when these traps are typically fishing, right, it's very important that they float because they don't become dams, they don't go underwater, they don't get stuck. Also, the trash is so roiling up, right, that the heavy things actually end up rafted on top or in the middle of big layers of plastic bottles, sticks, other things that are floating. Because they're all hard parts, there's no netting, there's no mesh, we've not seen any bycatch with these. Even on the sea bins, they have a little mesh basket. We actually saw a little bycatch in those, more than we expected, with some small fish, like largemouth bass fry. And over a decade of managing these traps, the bandalongs, we haven't seen any bycatch. Different jurisdictions use these traps differently. The district, Montgomery County, and Prince George's County have all seen fit to use these traps pretty heavily for workforce development. So in the district and Montgomery County, there's a lot of emphasis on youth workforce development. In the district lately, we've started partnering with another group that actually works a lot with returning citizens. For siting these, there's a couple engineering requirements. You can talk to Gary more about the details. Site flow in that stream is going to be very important. Vertical change, they're very good at accommodating, but they've got maximum flow rates depending on what kind of back grate you put down there. You also want to think about access, whether you're coming up with a truck or by hand. All of our cleanouts are by hand with those workforce development groups. And then permitting. So we've encountered a slew of different permitting environments as we've done this work. That one at the tippy top was the Lock Ridge bandalong trap, and that's the picture that you've seen twice now. Caught that today. This one's maintained with Montgomery County Conservation Corps. That's a program run through the Latin American Youth Center. They've been using it. Turns out this site doesn't have that much trash, so they've only been going out once a month. We were anticipating once a week at first based on other traps. So they've used this as sort of a stepping stone. They have a bunch of cohorts coming through. Those cohorts are kind of in a fixed 6-month or 9-month program, and then they try to help them find jobs afterwards. This is one of the things they're using to support those former cohort members. Because it's once a month, it filters in with a bunch of other tasks that they can do, but it's a good stepping stone opportunity. This one in particular is in the middle of a neighborhood. It is probably our most public-facing of these traps, and so it's also been a really good outreach opportunity to the neighborhood, the neighbors themselves, but a bunch of the community groups that circle it. It's right near the mouth or the head of a trail that goes down to the northwest branch, so it gets decent drive-by and walk-by traffic, and then you can see the sign that's on there facing those, so it gets a little bit of extra outreach passively. That was the one at the tippy top of the map. The other three that are on the right margin of the map are the other three in Prince George's County. So Prince George's County was the first jurisdiction in Maryland to install these kinds of traps. We installed 2 of the 3. That was actually in partnership with NOAA funding, in addition to the county's funding through the Chesapeake Bay Trust. The picture here is of foam, because despite Maryland having a foam ban, this trap in Arundel Canal is actually catching a ton of foam lately. It's interesting. The workforce group that we've been talking to there is going to start looking out to try to see if we can figure out why. That is new. That's just been a signal that we started seeing in the past couple of months. It looks like mostly old foam, but there's some construction-looking foam in there. There is UMD's campus upstream of this trap, and so we're wondering if we're catching some blow-off from a building project. That's something we're going to be looking into. The Guilford Run and Cabin Branch traps also have pretty good outreach capacity. Then the 4 in the district include this bad boy. So this is the Kenilworth Park Bandalong Litter Trap. This is the oldest one, not in Australia or the South Pacific. So Washington, D.C. was the first jurisdiction to install these traps outside of Australia. This one goes back to 2009. And you can see public enemy number 1 there. It's plastic bottles. That's been pretty consistent throughout the course of this one. I've got years for installation on the other traps. The Nash Run trap is the only one of these that we didn't help install, and it's the only one that's the bigger size. So all the other ones, we have the single trap size. That's about a 5-foot by 13-foot area inside the trap itself. And we manage the district traps with Ward 8 Woods Conservancy. We've used different subcontractors. Some of those have closed their doors. Some have just found other projects. This is the group that does a lot of work, not just with youth, but with returning citizens. Before we skip, not only are these teams going out and picking up trash, they are also leading volunteer events at these traps. So they're getting some volunteer management experience besides just picking out the trash. And we are taking a lot of data on all of this trash. So this is not just scoop the trash and run. Montgomery County, because it doesn't need it as often, is a monthly visit, but that's a full characterization, count, and weight per material type. And this is our list of material types. So this is the new and improved updated list for the district traps. We added a bunch of categories to update them on this new iteration of the grant to match better the categories we monitor in Montgomery County and Prince George's County, which are originally towards the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments categories. So we're slowly trying to inch as many jurisdictions to the same set of categories as possible. We also need to be thinking about our own older data sets, which were a lot broader. So we've been pretty careful about only splitting out older categories so that if we need to back calculate, we can. We'll just lose some resolution. But we're trying to avoid splitting categories and sending them to 2 new ones or having them go back. The full form is on the left. We are also currently just a few months into not only the new grant, but experimenting with a new way of getting this data to us from our subcontractors. So you can see the QR code there. That runs to a report form that the contractors can use. They've got an account with us. We're currently using Airtable as a databasing software that's new to us, but it plays nicely with some mapping software we're looking at for our website. So the idea is to streamline this so that it's becoming publicly accessible information a lot more quickly than it used to, and not just sent to the agencies, but open to everybody and as close to real time as we can get it. This is the older set of categories. This is from the final report we just closed out a few months ago with the district. So we added a lot of new ones, but we can still back calculate. So you'll see numbers like for the foam ban, we didn't have food and drink foam separated from non-food and drink foam until 2015. So those numbers begin there. You can see the foam ban works. So 2011 to 2014, it was 16% by weight. All of these percentages are by weight of litter. So this doesn't include the bulk trash weight in there. 2015 to 2019, starting right before the district implemented its foam ban. If we were a state at the time, we would have been the first. Sorry, Maryland and Maine. Through 2019, which was the end of the next grant cycle, it was already down to 12%, and at this point we started subsampling out the food and drink foam. So it was 10%. That is not 10 of the 12, right? Percentage-wise, it is 5/6 of all of that foam was just food and drink packaging. 2019 to 2023, the latest grant, it was down to 2.6% of all weight was food and drink foam. So there was a little bit of a decline, or actually a little bit of a rise in packaging foam, which is most of the non-food, but a sharp decline in food and drink foam. So the foam ban can work. The bag fee works, but it's older and it needs renewed enforcement. So we have a 5-cent fee on all retail bags, paper and plastic. This data is on plastic bags. The paper bags pretty much take care of themselves in the environment. We don't track those separately. They go into another category. When you see plastic grocery retail bags here, that is just the plastic ones. But the fee in the district applies to all disposable bags. That fee works. So they used to be the item number one in a visual survey of trash before the bag fee. The bag fee, I think, is 15 years old at this point. That precedes us working with the traps. So the traps have always worked in a bag fee environment. But over the course pre to post-COVID, we saw a 300 to 400% increase in how much of that weight was going to bags. It's still only 3.6%, but it's 3.5 times what it used to be. And that's a pretty sharp thing. And we know that enforcement dropped of the bag fee during COVID because it wasn't safe to send inspectors to businesses. And we see it anecdotally too. So we see it in the streams, we're seeing more bags. Enemy number one remains single-use plastic bottles. 54% of all of the trash by weight in the trash trap is just plastic bottles. When you add glass bottles and cans, they're not very big categories because these traps are mostly catching floatables. So we're getting the glass bottles that were sealed and landed on top of a raft of bottles or were perfectly empty and sealed. The cans, they stay neutrally to negatively buoyant, but they also get tumbled in there. When you add that up, it's 67%. It's almost 3/4. And that's something that other states deal with a lot better than our jurisdictions do. So that's something that we are using where this data goes from just data collection to advocacy and to policy. This is a major talking point we do with our boat tours. This is a big thing that gets people fired up. There is a renewed push with Trash Free Maryland and some other groups like Sierra Club Maryland to see a bottle bill put back in this year for the General Assembly. If y'all are in Maryland and interested, feel free to come find me. That's something we want to see more of. In the district, there's a group, 3rc4dc.org. I think we're about 15 partners deep right now, and we're pushing for a similar law in DC.
So I can't stand still, so I'm going to be walking around, but Mandy is going to be our presentation master here. My name's Marina Fieser, and this is Mandy Wells. We are both volunteers with the Ocean City chapter of Surfrider Foundation. We've been a chapter since 1999 protecting our local beaches here, but Surfrider has existed since the 80s. They started out in California. 2 surfers were worried about their local break and decided to do something about it. And since then, Surfrider has grown to over 200 plus chapters and clubs, protecting the East Coast, West Coast, the Gulf, and the Great Lakes now too. So huge, huge growth in the last several years. So we're going to talk about a program today that is specifically targeting plastic pollution at a source reduction level. Mandy.
Okay, so we're going to talk about ocean-friendly restaurants today. The purpose of ocean-friendly restaurants is to reduce single-use plastic and to recognize restaurants for making more sustainable choices and helping to protect our oceans. We have lots of different types of ocean-friendly restaurants, as you can see pictured, and I'll go through that in just a sec. So this program started in 2013 with the Surfrider Foundation Huntington Beach chapter and quickly expanded along the East Coast, or along the West Coast, and then worked its way eventually east. Became a nationally recognized program in 2018, and we've been working on it ever since. Like we said, the OFR, Ocean Friendly Restaurant goal, is to stop plastic at its source, to not have these restaurants putting plastic into our environments. We realized that it's become a major issue, plastic pollution has, across our country and across the world. Estimated 1 million metric tons of plastic enter our oceans every year, and inevitably every time that we do a beach cleanup around here, plastic is our #1 thing that we collect. In general, plastic straws and stirrers, the seventh most commonly found item, along with plastic fragments and plastic wrappers, food wrappers, from a lot of the places along the boardwalk. We know plastic bags take a long time to biodegrade, and we realized we can all play a role in trying to stop this plastic pollution from happening. We do have, across the nation, 539 ocean-friendly restaurants that are now participating in this program. That's the word I was looking for, sorry. And 96,000 single-use plastic-free meals a day. So we think that's pretty impressive. There are over 50 chapters working on this program together. You can see in our picture we have our trailblazer here in Ocean City. This is Ryan James. Him and his wife own Mother's Cantina in Ocean City, and they are one of our longest running ocean-friendly restaurants. They are absolutely 100% invested in protecting our oceans. Other restaurants that are in the program, it's not just strictly restaurants. It could be cafes, breweries, juice bars. There are a few dining halls on college campuses that participate in this in the OFR program. Food trucks, all sorts of things can be an OFR.
So what's it mean to be an OFR? We're going to say OFR a lot. It's ocean-friendly restaurants. It's just way easier to say. But there's 7 mandatory requirements, like I said, I'm going to move around, that all the restaurants have to do to be part of the program. So those are listed here on the screen now, and they are only reusable foodware for your on-site dining, so no plastics when patrons are dining in the restaurant. Paper straws only upon request. That one has a little bit of wiggle room where you can do things like bamboo or hay straws, but Surfrider is kind of not a huge proponent of bioplastics, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. No plastic bags for takeout. Easy one. All your single-use straws, utensils, condiments, they're not getting placed in the takeout bags immediately. They're only available upon request. No styrofoam, which is an easy one because you can't have styrofoam in Maryland anyway. And no beverages sold in plastic bottles on site, and then proper recycling practices are done, which is kind of a challenge in Ocean City with no recycling. But then you have 3 optional criteria listed here. You have optional criteria listed on this slide. The restaurant has to choose at least 3. If they do all of them, then they're a platinum level, so they get like all of the gold stars. But some of these options include, vegetarian and vegan options, being one of the best or a good alternative on the Seafood Watch program, energy efficiency efforts, and one of our favorites here in Ocean City, composting efforts. We have a huge composting effort led by another nonprofit called Go Green OC. They are working with 30-plus restaurants to help divert food waste and have been doing an incredible job. So we like to highlight that one. I think the next slide, yeah. So bioplastics, what's wrong with bioplastics? I'm sure most of you all know this, but they're only going to biodegrade in a commercial composting facility. So of course we do see a little bit of that here in OC with Go Green, but that's not happening everywhere. Also contaminates your recycling, and these products are costing the restaurants more money, probably not getting the outcome that we want with the biodegrading, and it also kind of just allows that single-use mindset to continue. They're still a single-use product, even though it's a more eco-friendly material.
Okay, so when restaurants decide that, when we reach out to them and they decide that they want to join the OFR program, we give them the link to sign up. They go online, they sign up for the program. It used to cost money to do this, which was really not helpful to try to get these programs or these restaurants on board. But in the past couple years, I think ever since COVID, the fee has been waived for restaurants to join the program. So now it's free for any restaurant to join. If they do want to make a donation, then half of that donation stays within our chapter. They do have to follow the mandatory and chosen optional criteria, whichever 3 options they choose to do. And there are in-person compliance checks throughout the year, usually done by yours truly and other volunteers that want to just double check that they don't have any questions, or just to make sure that that they're doing everything that they're supposed to be doing. It's kind of more of a pledge than anything really, that they're just pledging to be more sustainable and to help our environment. Some benefits that the restaurants get for being an ocean-friendly restaurant are their membership is good for a year. Surfrider Foundation will send them a little bit of swag to put on their windows with stickers. They have brochures. They have inserts that they can put into their bills when they hand the checks out. They used to have the little table tents, and I think you can request those as well. They can use our logo, the OFR logo, on all their menus and social media and websites, anything used for marketing. They are listed on the National Chapter website, and there is an interactive map that I'll show you a picture of in the next slide. Tax-deductible donation opportunity to the Surfrider Foundation, and they are associated with a nationally recognized nonprofit, the Surfrider Foundations, that has thousands of members across the country and internationally. Here is a screenshot of the interactive map, and you can see kind of where a lot of these restaurants are along the coast, and a little bit throughout the Great Lakes area. So if you are in an area that you're unfamiliar with and you want to support the Surfrider Foundation and the Ocean Friendly Restaurant Program, you can go to the Surfrider Foundation site, click on their map, and then click on the state, and it'll come up with all the restaurants that are in that area that you can visit. Locally, what we try to do with our ocean-friendly restaurants, we're going to promote them through the Surfrider Foundation chapter social media pages. We like to host our events at our ocean-friendly restaurants, so they do get our business. The Ocean City Chamber of Commerce and their green program is now going to have their restaurants on their website and on their app, so that all our friends that come and visit us every summer can click on that app in that area, and then also support those restaurants for wanting to protect our areas. And they also get national vendor discounts on restaurant supplies if they're part of this program.
Cool. So we wanted to talk a little bit about challenges that we've come across during this program. Every program has challenges, and COVID, of course, was a huge one. Everything was shut down. People weren't coming. The restaurants weren't open. They didn't have staff. So obviously we weren't going to try to put another burden on these restaurants and be like, hey, you want to change all your supplies to more eco-friendly things that are going to cost you more money? So we didn't do that. We gave them some breathing room. We kept our relationships that we already had, of course, checked in on them. How can we support you? How can we promote you? But we weren't asking them to sign up for this program at that time.
We did realize that throughout COVID and right after COVID, when things started opening back up again, the restaurants around here were really struggling to find people that wanted to work in the restaurant business. Mainly, a lot of restaurants weren't opening fully as they had in the past, and people were making less money. So we really didn't want to add this onto their plate. So we kind of, like Marina said, we reached out. We tried to meet up with managers via social media and during off-peak times to try, to see if this would be something they'd be interested in the future. Again, we really weren't trying to push it during this stressful time for these restaurants.
Also, if any of you have all worked with the restaurant industry before with your groups, you know that the managers and the owners are definitely difficult to get a hold of. The summer is busy and it's impossible to find the free moment for when they can breathe. And then in the off season, a lot of the restaurants are closing down. owners are traveling, so it was a little difficult for us to connect with the owners and the managers that were making these decisions. So Mandy had a wonderful idea to do a webinar where folks could sign up, they could come and listen to us virtually on their own time. We recorded it and sent it out to restaurants that we thought might be interested. We had Ryan from Mothers and Josh from Go Green OC speak on their respective expertise. And so now we have that as a tool. It's on our website. We can send it out to all of you guys, anyone that we feel like might be interested in the program.
And our last setback was we did not have a local budget to recruit and, pass out swag or anything to these restaurants. We did try to, I work at the local high school around this area, and we tried to recruit students who wanted to get some service hours to go around these restaurants. We tried to target students whose parents were in the business that might have had some connections. So we had some students get involved as well and head out and try to recruit some of these restaurants.
All right, now we'll talk about the good stuff. So we've kind of had like a cycle of ocean-friendly restaurants. Some restaurants will do it for a year, a couple of years, then they'll kind of take a step back and take a break. But so we have Mothers here and also Low Tide Lunchbox. It's part of Ocean City Organics. It's like a grab-and-go type situation. And but past Ocean City specifically has been Pickles Pub, 45th Street Tap House, Aqua, which is at the BWI Hilton, and Blacksmith in Berlin. There's also some in Delaware, and in the brand new Annapolis chapter of Surfrider is also recruiting actively. I think the DC chapter is getting ready to amp their efforts back up, so we'll have some more in DC. Another bonus is that we got, like Mandy said, we got a lot of students involved in this program. We had a group of college students from SU do kind of like reaching out to the local restaurants to see who might be interested in it, and that kind of gave us a recruiting list, which was awesome, but it also fulfilled their requirements for their class. And we've had high school students with the Surfrider clubs also help us out with recruitment. And now we're working with the town of Ocean City through this app. It's called Explore OC. It's a free app. Visitors can use it, locals can use it, and then you click on the dining tab and it tells you all of the composting restaurants and all of the OFRs too. And so on a bigger scale, the program impact, we not only take data from this program, but also from our beach cleanup program. We have a huge beach cleanup database where we collect all of everything that we pick up at our beach cleanups. It's national, it's not just our chapter, everybody does it. And then that data can be used to help us win plastic pollution victories. And a recent win was at the New York City chapter. They just worked on, with lots of other groups, to get a skip the stuff policies. So that's going to be like your takeout condiments, single-use plastics. They will not be offered to everyone anymore. You have to ask for those kind of things. So they were able to use their data from beach cleanups and evidence from restaurants participating in the OFR program that we can do this. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of resources to help with the program too, which is awesome. So these are all online. You can download them all from the Surfrider website. There is a foodware guide that helps restaurants pick like the best options for their sustainable foodware. There is a OFR, and there's also a Great Lakes friendly restaurant program that is pretty much identical, but it's specifically for the Great Lakes. And I have some brochures with me today. If you want to come find me, I can give you a couple. There's a quick guide for restaurants to get started, and that just recently got translated into Spanish, which is great. Also, there is a staff member solely dedicated to this at Surfrider Foundation that can answer way more questions than Mandy and I could. Her name is CJ O'Brien. Her email is right here on the screen, so she's a great resource as well.
Okay, and because the ocean-friendly restaurant program has been so successful over the years, Surfrider Foundation is going to pilot next year. Well, they have a few right now, but they're going to start an ocean-friendly hotel program. They do have a few in the California area. I think they've started with 4 so far just to see if it was doable, and they are doing it. And it's kind of the same concept as ocean-friendly restaurants, reducing single-use plastics in the hotel scene, and showing society and policymakers what's possible, and influence legislation. Whoops. I don't know what I did. Some things that are part of the ocean-friendly hotel program is no plastic beverage bottles sold on site. Cups, utensils, straws, and other accessories in rooms are reusable. Toiletries, like the shampoos and conditioners, are not packaged in small plastic bottles. Water refill stations available. Coffee and tea stations, no Keurig pods. And if there's a restaurant on site, it needs to be an ocean-friendly restaurant. So that's in the future. That's for future us. We'll see if we can get there. And then if you guys have any questions about this program or want to learn more about it, you can email us, and there are our emails. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks so much for the invitation to be here. It's great to be in this area. I'm coming up from our north coast, but I did all my graduate work south of here on the Eastern Shore in Virginia, so it's nice to be back in this area. So I'm going to be talking about stormwater debris and the work we're doing, starting first with a research project that's part of a NOAA Marine Debris Research Grant, and then moving into a new Sea Grant Community Coalition project that we're working on that kind of builds on what we learned with the research grant. So we hear a lot about the amount of debris entering the oceans, 9 million tons of plastic, but the Great Lakes are also subject to the same input of plastic, and the input is pretty much the same. We don't have these garbage patches like in the ocean, and a lot of the models are showing that the materials actually end up blowing back to shore unless they make their way all the way out to the oceans. So this 22 million pounds of plastic entering the Great Lakes each year was an estimate, a model estimate, created by my colleague at RET, Matt Hoffman. But those estimates like that are pretty coarse. They don't distinguish between the source or the type or where it's coming in or how it's moving through the landscape. And most of this debris is coming from the land. So stormwater is a pretty understudied but important debris pathway to the coastal zone. Microplastic concentrations in stormwater are a lot higher than they are coming out of wastewater treatment plants. Wastewater treatment plants take some of the microplastic out, but not all of it. Mostly what comes out are fibers. But most of the plastic that does enter ecosystems is macroplastic, so the big stuff. So our research objectives here were looking at this kind of general transport pathway of how debris escapes the waste management system for a huge variety of reasons, and then passes through infrastructure or environmental filters, whether it's the stormwater system and goes to a wastewater treatment plant, or a stormwater retention pond or a riparian area. Some of it's captured, we don't know how much, and we don't know how that differs across different materials, and then the rest may be transported to the river and then to the lake. So the piece of the research that I'll be talking about today is just the input sources. We also are looking at how some of these sinks in the landscape associated with environmental filters vary across the landscape, and then ultimately coming up with a model to better confine these estimates of how much debris enters the coastal zone. We're using 3 different kinds of capture, going kind of from the very upstream in tributaries. I'll be talking a little bit about that sampling effort. We have lithotraps, which are storm drain inserts to capture debris, and I'll focus mostly on that technology. And then we also have sea bins. We've deployed 6 sea bins. We have had a similar experience to what Trey had, that they capture a lot of debris, and it's not necessarily representative of the total flux out. It's floatable, and it's a lot of weeds. So they've been a little less effective than we hoped. We also have problems with zebra mussels. I'm happy to, if anybody's interested in sea bins, I'm happy to talk more about that. This is our study area in Rochester, New York. It's kind of a typical Rust Belt city on the Great Lakes, about 1 million people. We've got two main river inputs. It's the Genesee River and Irondequoit Creek that are on either side of the city. And it's a really steep gradient from the rural areas. It's a lot of dairy and agriculture through the city and then out to the coast. So with the tributary input, we've looked at small tributaries on these two main stems entering the lake. And we have in each of these main stems a rural tributary and a suburban tributary. And we've sampled these using a modified manta trawl that captures all the flow. We attach it to a culvert. And I've sampled each tributary 4 times, so seasonally, and we've done a couple of event sampling. And so that's ice in the bottom, so we're even trying to capture this during the winter time. And normally I don't like tables in talks, but this one's, I think, kind of effective because it's really all zeros. We've caught very, very little macro debris in these, and each one of these sampling points, so each 0 represents 3 hours of flow time. So it's very little debris that we're actually finding. We're working on the microplastic, though, and that's looking like there's actually quite a lot of microplastic entering through the tributaries. So then moving to the stormwater inputs in the suburban and urban areas, we're using the litter trap debris interception technologies. We have 9 of these that are deployed in urban areas. So there's 6 in urban areas and 3 in suburban. And then within those, they're broken up into pairs of residential and commercial sites. In the map on the right, the dots show where the litter traps are. The blue and the green are the different kinds of stormwater systems. So the city of Rochester, the majority of it, is on a combined sewer. So the debris enters and would go to the wastewater treatment plant unless we have a big rainstorm, and then you have a combined sewer overflow event where raw sewage and the stormwater all go out directly to the lake. That happens periodically. Rochester is pretty good with managing these CSO events and has water storage capacity, but it's increasing with the change in precipitation patterns. The green are all the municipal separate storm sewer systems, and that's where all the debris goes directly to the environment. So the storm sewer is separate from the wastewater system. So this is the litter traps. There's this little video that shows what they are, but they're essentially a basket that's inserted on a bracket that's screwed into the wall of the catch basin. And when we get to go sampling these, we remove the debris that's on top and discard it, and then we sample what's inside the litter trap. So we've done sampling. It was every 2 weeks for the first year, and now we've moved to monthly. We're working on stretching out the sampling to see how long we can go, to see what's a little more practical from a mitigation standpoint and not just a research standpoint. Comes back to the lab. It's pretty gross materials. The urban stuff has a lot of things in it. The one that my student loves to talk about is an entire hot dog that she found. But anyway, we sieve it to remove some of the really tiny stuff, and then it's sorted. It's sorted by size, category, material, and morphology. It's a pretty tedious process, but it's been yielding some really interesting data. So this is an example of an urban commercial site, and this is what we found in 1 2-week period. So it's split by the different materials, and some of these are mixed, where it's a composite of metal and plastic, or different kinds of paper and plastic materials, but it's a lot that we're finding every 2 weeks. So moving into some of what the data looks like, so this is for the first roughly 18 months of the project, looking at the monthly values relative to the rainfall. So this is wet mass, and it varies a lot. And we're actually seeing that some of the residential sites, which are the filled circles, have more debris than the open circles, which are the commercial sites, and that's because of things like leaves, and that they tend to retain a lot of water. So the wet mass is pretty variable. Over time, we see some relationship to these events where we get a big rainstorm that pushes a lot of debris in. This is split up, this is the average across all the sampling, and it's split in each figure urban and suburban, and then the blue is commercial and the green is residential. So the top row is all the masses in kilograms per month. So total wet mass is greater in these residential sites, and that's associated with a lot of this organic debris. And then you can see that in the middle top figure, where this organic mass is much greater. At the residential sites, that's lawn clippings, leaves, material that we don't necessarily want going into the stormwater system, but it's not anthropogenic debris. The anthropogenic debris, and it's all on the same scale as the organic, just for perspective, is much less of what we're finding, but it's still a significant amount. It's about 300 grams per month per trap is the average that we're getting, and it's pretty mixed. Then the bottom row is all total number of pieces per month. It's about 300 pieces on average in the commercial sites, so that's a lot when you're considering that this is per trap and we've got 30,000 storm drains in the region. And it's, as you would expect, it's higher in commercial than residential. The plastic is the most common type of material that we're finding. Lots of plastic, a lot more is in the commercial areas, and a lot of cigarette butts, particularly in these areas. They're the most easy to recognize material that we find. This is an example of a summer and a winter sampling. So 1-2 week period. This is the number of items that we found. You can see a lot of variation across different sites, from very, very little debris to a lot of debris, more than 200 pieces. And then again, the cigarette butts in the summer are by far the most common material. It shifts in the wintertime. People aren't smoking outside, I guess, or throwing cigarette butts out their windows, and we shift to things more like beverage containers and food wrappers, being the more common materials in the wintertime. But the amount of debris really doesn't change across seasons. But what this says is that the problem's pretty local, and so targeted solutions need to be local, because the material you're finding in different places varies. And so if you think about the catchment for these, it's very small, and so we can see what the sources are really locally. So the conclusions for this piece, there's a lot of urban debris, and it has the potential to contribute significantly to lake loading. And using these data, we have opportunities to use the results for strategic interception. It's not a trivial matter to put these in and remove the debris. It's not hard. They're not really technically challenging, but it takes time. So we can be thinking about where to target putting in traps based on, we can look at MS4 systems where the debris is going straight out, or CSO systems where we see a lot of debris. The map on the right is the kind of first pass through a model of trying to figure out where hotspots of debris are, using the data and then different socioeconomic factors to figure that out. And then we also have the opportunity to use these results for strategic engagement. Through community surveys, we found that roughly 2/3 of the residents in Rochester have no idea where the water goes when it goes down the drain. So there's a huge opportunity for education about the water cycle and stormwater in the region. And I think this is probably true in most places. The need to connect people with the water that goes down the drain on the street and then what's coming back that you drink. And so trash is actually a really nice thing because it's very visible and obvious, and it resonates with kids. So we've got a great opportunity to do education. So this is going into the new project that we're just starting. It's a community coalition project funded by the National Sea Grant Office, and we're collaborating with New York Sea Grant on this, where we're taking the litter traps and installing them in kind of strategic locations that were chosen based on the educational opportunities. The collection of the debris in these traps will be facilitated by our students and then also by Sea Grant staff. And then the programming at each site is going to be specific to the site, but developed across a curriculum of plastic pollution and stormwater pollution, where the youth are able to participate in the collection, in the data analysis, and then in developing action plans that are very locally designed by them to try to mitigate the debris problem. So it develops a lot of data analysis skills and storytelling skills, but also marketing and branding skills for these students that they can use in their own local neighborhood and encouraging environmental stewardship. The locations that we've selected, some of these are at city-run rec centers. The city in the areas where we're putting these is about 90% minority, and more than 70% of the people live below the poverty limit. So it's a really high-need area and also a significant environmental justice community. We're also at 2 schools, and then also putting them at the Seneca Park Zoo, which is our local zoo, and the local science museum, which each have almost 400,000 visitors a year. So the visibility is great for these. So that project's just getting started. I think the litter traps just arrived today in Rochester to be installed. So we will hopefully have a lot more to share about that soon. But I'm happy to answer any questions during the Q&A. And I just want to acknowledge especially this group of students. The one in the front is the one that's primarily been dealing with this litter trap data. That's Pedrino. But they've been a huge help and on the ground with this. So thank you.
Hi, I have a question for Christy. I'm curious about the outreach to the recreation centers and the local science museum, how you went about approaching them. Was that a collaborative process? How did you get the materials and develop the programming information for those outlets?
This is Jason, you can hear me. Yeah, that's a good question, and I think that's that relationship building and partnership building is incredibly important. It's time consuming, and it's something that requires thought and care and intention in doing that. So these are relationships that we've been working on for a long time. I've collaborated with the zoo for at least a decade, and the Science Museum for longer than that. And so having those partnerships in place it's really valuable, but it does take time to do that, and you need to be responsive to the needs and the differences at each of these sites. So every rec center is different. The educators at each rec center are different, and they have different needs. It's a different population. So it really needs to be a collaborative process. And we also are really cognizant of not coming in with a kind of top-down, your neighborhood is dirty approach, and not doing kind of neighborhood shaming, because a lot of times the kids and the people that you're dealing with, they aren't the ones that are throwing cigarette butts on the ground. And so working in a more proactive and a positive way, and not in neighborhood shaming is the best term I can come up with, but it's really important not to do that, because we really don't want to have it that the university is coming in and dictating what to do. So I think overall it's time and energy and partnership and friendship, and building those relationships is really important.
To the litter trap presenters, how are you using your data? Are you sharing your data with policymakers, legislators, and the like?
So the traps are funded by different jurisdictions. So each of the jurisdictions are getting reports at least quarterly. So Prince George's County, Maryland, Montgomery County, Maryland, District of Columbia. And then the reason we've got the QR code and are starting to move to Airtable is to try to get some real-time maps. So we've put up maps now. They're a little gremlin-y of our volunteer cleanup data on our website. We're looking to do the very same thing with the traps data, so that people can go play with the data themselves and set a time range. They can set this trap or that trap. Ideally choose even like a category. But right now it's in front of the agencies, so the regulators, and then we use this data in our talking points and direct advocacy. So when we go in front of council, a good example is the Maryland state ban on styrofoam. We went head-to-head with DART, who very generously funded a study of litter in our watershed for us and found almost no foam. But we had decades of pictures and data from the traps and from cleanups, and we got unanimous votes in favor of the ban in Prince George's County and Montgomery County. And because they're so populous, with just a couple more local bans, that became the statewide ban a couple years later.
Right now, the data is pretty new, so we haven't shared it yet, but we will be, and working on the best way to present that. I will say, one thing I see that we've run into as a problem, and I think it's something I would love to talk to more people about, is the categorization varies significantly, and it seems like everybody starts to come up with their own categories based on what they're finding. And so what you find on clean swell might not match what you're finding. And I think there's a need for a more cohesive categorization scheme that encompasses everything, because things you find in beach cleanups and NOAA's marine guidance is really different than what you find on an urban street. And so I do see that as a place to try to come together and come up with a more cohesive categorization strategy so that the data can be compared better across different programs and cleanups and capture technologies.
So I'd like to share just briefly our litter trap in Prince William County that we've had in operation for 2 years. And by far and away, the number one and number two items, no surprise, single-use plastic bottles. And for the most part, we're able to recycle those bottles because they're in a decent condition. But the biggest surprise and the biggest finding was single-use styrofoam. Your Chick-fil-A cups, carry out, single-use, and also styrofoam packaging. And in that surprise, we were surprised that styrofoam broke down so quickly from the time it went through a storm drain and was captured by the bandalong. A lot of them were broken down into less than a square inch in size. So that was a huge finding. I just wanted to share that.
Hi, this is a question for the Surfrider folks. As you're expanding your ocean-friendly restaurants and hotels program, do you anticipate having any sort of verification process to ensure that these entities are complying with the things that they say they're doing? It's a voluntary program right now. People are doing it because they're excited about it. But if you're expanding your reach or it's starting to get more popular, do you anticipate doing little checks to make sure they're not oh, actually, we started using plastic straws again or stuff like that?
Right now, we don't see that in the near future. If it does expand a lot further and into the hotel program, there may be more stringent check-ins. But right now, like I said earlier, it's kind of just a pledge that they're doing, and we're all just trying to do our little part to stop plastic from getting into the environment. But I really don't think that there is going to be more stringent check-ins and maybe fines or something. I don't know if we're really headed in that direction.
I want to jump in on that because anybody that goes to eat at those restaurants can report back to Surfrider. So you can all help report. And your jurisdictions, if you're the agency side, you can look for laws that will make it illegal. So the district has a skip the stuff law it came into effect about 1.5 years ago. We have the foam ban, we have the bag fee, and all of those, there's an anonymous reporting form on doe.dc.gov. And anybody, doesn't need to be a resident, you don't have to give any of your information if you don't want. You can just report, I was at this restaurant on this date and they did this, this, or that. And then that doesn't become a ticket, but that does become a visit by an inspector who is an agency staff person. They go in as a secret shopper and then they do the compliance check. But it's vetted by just general public reports.
So I actually kind of have a two-part question for you as well. You mentioned that people who are part of the program get the national vendor discounts. One, how many people or how many restaurants are taking advantage of that? And two, I know that cost is a really big barrier for people, so is there a way for people to get those discounts before completely becoming a part of the program in order to become a part of the program?
Good questions. So I think if a restaurant was like mostly on their way to becoming ocean friendly, I feel like those discounts would be available. That would be like a partnership that would work between Surfrider headquarters with CJ and that restaurant specifically. I'm sorry, what was the first part of the question? I'm so sorry. Oh, we're taking advantage. Yeah, I don't know that number off the top of my head. That would definitely be a CJ question, but I feel like it's a good perk. Some of the discounts are pretty deep. They're up to 40%, 50% off, so it's definitely beneficial to take advantage of it.
Trey, congratulations on your success with the foam ban. The data shows you've reduced it significantly. Can you share that data with us?
Yes, happily.
Great.
And it was a lot of nonprofits, not just us.
Okay, super. And to the ocean-friendly people, have you considered ocean-friendly convenience stores?
I mean, that might be where we're going next, right? I don't know. The possibilities are endless, I suppose. That would be difficult. There's a lot of plastic packaging that I feel like in the
We know our local 7-Elevens and how they contribute to the problem.